Hello everyone, Nadezhda here, and in today's lesson we are going to learn how to work share in Revit. We are going to learn how to create a central file on our server in Revit, and we are also going to learn how to work with our teammates in that file. We are going to learn all about worksets and also many other handy tips and tricks about work sharing in Revit. So let's begin. Here in my Revit I have opened one regular file. It is still not a central file, and we are going to learn how to create a central file from it. This is just the model from my course, and in order to create the central file, I go to the option Collaborate and I click on Collaborate tool. You're given two options, and the first option is actually work sharing on your company's server. So once you have a server set up, you can create the central model on that server, and all of your teammates in your company can enter this model through that central file. Another option is the construction cloud, which is part of the format now, and it is not going to be the topic of today's lesson, but I do plan on covering that topic in the future as well. So today we are going to choose within your network and we are going to click OK. One thing I have to note first is that this is not possible in any other cloud service. A lot of people ask me whether they can set this up in the Google Drive or Microsoft Cloud or Dropbox or something like that, and essentially it is not possible because these services do not work the same way that this Autodesk Construction Cloud works. So you might be able to create the model to upload it, but you're not going to be able to work properly in it. It is not going to be able to handle these requests the same way that the work sharing model on the server or on the construction cloud do. So once the central model has been created, the next step is actually saving it. So I go to File, Save As, and I save this project somewhere on my computer. I will just save it here in this folder, and I can click on options, and I have few options that I can set up here. First option is the maximum number of backups, and this I would leave as 20. If you're working on a very large project, then even a bigger number than this is needed, but if you're working on some small project like this, for example, 20 is enough. The next option is the active workset that is going to be opened with the central model, and this we are going to cover a little bit later in the lesson when we get to the worksets. And you also can set up the thumbnail preview, which is basically this small image that you can see here once you open the folder. Basically here, as you can see, we have the preview of our model, so we can choose which picture we want to show here. For example, instead of this active view sheet, I will just choose some, for example, this 3D view, whatever it is, and I will click OK and I will click Save. I will wait a minute or two depending on the size of the model we have here, and once everything is set up, I can for now just close this model. The reason I have turned it off is because central model is something that we never want to enter directly. That means each of the team members is going to be creating the new local files before actually opening the central model. Local files are the files that are on your computer, and they belong to you and they contain all of your modifications. So while you are actively working in the model, you are actually working in your local file. And once you synchronize your changes, basically you are going to be uploading them to the central model. But you never actually want to enter the central model directly. And that is why we have this first rule that comes with working in the central models, and that is from now on you can never enter your model by double-clicking it. It is the habit that we have when working on the regular file, but from now on, once you are working in the central file with the teams, you may never enter the model by double-clicking it. Instead, the best way to open the model is by clicking Open, and then by finding your model in your folders. And once I have found the model, I have to make sure that this option of Create New Local is checked, because if it is not checked, you are going to be entering the central model directly, and then you are going to disable everyone else from saving their work. Once you make sure that this is checked, you can click on Open. And by the way, it is going to be checked by default 99% of the times, but occasionally something will happen and it will not be checked. and that's why you have to be extra cautious. So once you make sure it's checked, you click Open. To make sure that your model is successfully opened, you have to make sure that you have your username right after the name of the model, because this central model name is course project, but my local file has this username in the end, so you have to make sure that your username is visible here in the name of the model. So once I see my username, I know that I have entered the local copy of my file. And if you want to know where your local copies are, you can go to the options, and here in the file locations, you can see that this is where your local copy is going to be. So if I open this folder, I can see that I have this course project BIM Tonic model here. So it's important to be aware that you're now working in the local copy of your central model. If you want to change your file location, you can click on Browse and you can set up your local copies to be stored wherever you want. And now the process works this way. Basically, once I'm working in this model, I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to create some new elements. I'm going to delete some old elements, do any sort of modifications. And once I'm ready to save that, I'm going to click Synchronize. Synchronize works by basically uploading your changes to the model. And to synchronize, I can go to the Collaborate option and I can click Synchronize with Central. I see the window and I click OK. This basically uploads everything that I've done from my local file to the central model. So if I want to upload all of my changes, I do the synchronize instead of save. That doesn't mean that save doesn't work anymore, but save doesn't actually upload anything. It just saves your local copy, which can actually be very handy because once you're working on a really big project, a lot of people are going to be in the same model. And sometimes with these very large models, synchronize can last for a very long time. It can last to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you don't want to be waiting for 10 minutes every now and then, but you do want to be saving more often. So it is a good practice to actually click Save occasionally to save your changes to your local files in case your file crashes, because files do crash and you actually want to always be saving without always uploading and synchronizing. So you will occasionally click Save in order to save your work to your local copy, and when you are ready for this big save, you can click on Synchronize and then save your model. Like I said, be prepared to wait a couple of minutes if your file size is very big. But what happens if I made some updates and I have changed something in my model? For example, I have moved this wall and I still haven't synchronized, and someone from my team actually wants to update the same wall. So this person tried to modify it while I was working on it. What happens in these cases is basically you will get the request from your teammates. You can find a list of requests here in the editing request symbol, and once you click here, you will get the list of all of these requests. It is not just the list. Basically, every time someone sends you a request, you will get pop-up notification in your model, so it will be very visible. You don't have to always check whether someone sent you the request. You can actually just make sure that there are no pop-ups here. So you will get the requests and you will have the option of granting and denying requests. 99% of the time, you will actually click grant. But sometimes the grant will be frozen, and in those cases you actually have to close this and synchronize. Once you synchronize, that person can simply click Reload Latest, and then they will actually get all of your updates and they will be able to work on these elements again. The same goes for you. Essentially, once you're working on this element while somebody else is working on it, you will simply, once you try to modify it, get the notification that asks you whether you want to send the request to the person who is working on this, or do you want to cancel your modifications. And that is basically how this teamwork is going to work out for you and for everyone else on the project. And the next topic that is incredibly important when it comes to work sharing is actually the topic of worksets. Once I go to the workset option, I am giving this window where I can actually divide my model to have the new worksets. Worksets enable you to divide your model into the separate categories. You have the full freedom to create these categories however you want, but some generic ways, for example, separating the model into the interior elements, exterior elements, and structural elements, and landscape elements, etc. Basically, however you want to divide these worksets, you can, whatever is actually going to give you the best categorization of your elements. Worksets are incredibly useful for setting up your graphics, for setting up your schedules, and generally for working with your team. They are exceptionally useful when you have very big model. For example, if we have some incredibly large model, and it is a slow model and you have a lot of elements and everything is running very slowly, you can actually choose some of the worksets you're not working in and you can close them. Let's now create, for example, facade elements, and I will click new and I will call this workset facade elements. I click OK, and now I will create the interior elements, then structural elements, and in the end landscape elements. I click OK and I can see that I have several options here. We will explore them all, but let's first get our elements in their appropriate worksets. I click OK and I am asked whether I want to make the landscape elements the active worksets. I will click yes, and we can see that now these landscape elements are here listed as the active workset. That means everything that I model from now on will be modeled in the landscape elements. If I want to change that, if I want to model something in, for example, facade elements, then I should change the active worksets. And don't worry, in the end I will show you how to check whether your elements are in the right worksets. But before we continue with the lesson, let's hear a word of a sponsor, which is also actually me. If you want to learn Revit with me, I have actually created a course which is designed specifically to make you ready to work in Revit independently or in big teams. In this course, you also have the assignments where you get to exercise everything that you learn, and you also get to ask questions directly from instructors. So everything that was not clear to you, everything that you need help with, I answer these questions the same day. So you don't just watch videos, but you interactively learn Revit. I have also made the special attention to the people who already have some experience but in AutoCAD, so I have made sure to actually help you transition from AutoCAD to Revit very smoothly. While this is a beginner's course, it is also very useful for people who already have some experience but want to level up their Revit knowledge. To see the course content, go to thebimtonic.net, and I hope to see you in these lessons. So let's continue with this lesson. So now I want to select all of these facade walls. Let's just take all of these instances together and just select all of this and get these elements to be into the facade elements tool. I will take these windows as well. I will also take these railings and these curtain walls as well. I'm not going to be very precise, so I don't spend too much time in selecting the elements, but once you're ready to change all of these elements, we can simply click here on this drop-down menu, and then we can change this to be facade elements. I will take all of these doors, these curtain panels as well, and I will change them to be facade elements. I can select all of the trees and the topography, and I can just select planting with the filters, and I can select my topography and change that to be the landscape elements. Now I will take these columns and I will change them to be the structural elements, and this roof can also be the landscape elements. I will now go to ground floor and I will select everything. And I will just keep doors, floors, generic models. and walls, and also stairs. And I will choose this to be the interior elements. I will not be selecting anymore because I don't want to take too much of your time. So now I have placed all of these in their appropriate worksets. The reason why it's very useful is that we can go now to the workset tools and we have a couple of options. First option is, for example, you can close the entire workset. I can click on, for example, the landscape elements and click close. When I go to OK, I can see that I no longer have any planting or any topography. This is exceptionally useful when you're working on the very large models. If you are in the large model, it is going to be working very slowly because there is too many elements in the model. But if you close the worksets that you do not need, then you will have much easier time working. You will have less of the elements slowing down your model and it will not be working so slowly. You also can simply close the elements that you simply don't need, because some elements are simply the working elements, some are temporary elements, and you have many options with it. Essentially, it will help you a lot, especially in these bigger projects. You can go back to worksets, and when I'm ready to retrieve this workset, I can simply click open and everything will be pretty much the same. There is also another option that is handy, and that is whether this is visible in all of the views. So I can simply uncheck this and click OK. And now this workset is open, but it is not visible. In order for me to see this landscape in this view, I have to go to the visibility graphics or templates and go to the worksets tab. And I can go to the landscape elements and I can see now that its setting is set to not visible. I can click here and I can click show and click OK. And now it's visible, but it is only visible here in this one view. If I go to some other view, for example, this one, I can see that here it is not visible and I would have to do the same process again to show it. You can also invert this process. For example, something is generally visible in all views. That means by default its visibility is on. But if you want to turn it off, you can go to template or to visibility graphics and change this setting. Basically, you can click hide here and now it is going to be hidden only from this view. And it is very, very helpful for whenever you're working on the complex projects, this ability to actually close and open these worksets. Also this ability to show them and to hide them. I'm just going to go back to the visibility graphics and here I am going to choose either show or use global settings, which is basically setting them up to the default setting. And once I click OK, everything is visible. The main problem with the worksets is you're occasionally going to forget about them. This does not depend on your level of experience, it is just the human psychology. We are sometimes going to be forgetting about things, especially if we are in the rush and it is not going to be something that we can always control. So occasionally you will simply leave these worksets at facade elements, for example, and once you're switching the tasks, you are basically going to have to switch the workset as well, but occasionally you're going to forget that. And if you want to check whether you have modeled everything in the right worksets, there is this very handy option. That is Worksharing display. Once you click here, you have the option worksets, and when you click on it, you can see by color where your worksets are. For example, I can see that this wall is purple, and we can see that the purple workset is actually workset 1. Basically, I have forgotten to turn this to the right workset. So once I can see that, I can actually select it and I can just move it to the facade elements. The same goes for this flat roof. For example, I do want that to be in the facade elements as well. And this way you can actually check your worksets and change them to whatever workset you want them to be in. It is exceptionally handy because, like I said, worksets are going to be something that you will want to check occasionally because if you are using these hide and close options, you do want your worksets to be correct. And that means occasional testing if you have been modeling in the right worksets. If you want to change the colors, you can go to the Worksharing display settings, and here you can choose which colors you want. But generally, these default colors are usually good because they do provide some good contrasts, but maybe sometimes it will happen that these contrasts are not good and you might want to change these colors. There are also a couple of other handy Worksharing display options. For example, if I go to the Owners option and I hover over some elements, I can see who the current owner is, who created it, and who was last updated by, and who it was requested by. If we have some problem with this element, if we don't know what to do with it, if it's some new element that we were not previously aware of, basically here we can see, for example, who it was created by, and then we can simply go to that person and talk to that person just to find out everything that confuses us about this element. It is very useful for teamwork because very often you are not going to be aware of all of the changes that are going on in the project, and if you do have some question about anything, you can check out these Worksharing display options and see everything about these elements. Once I want to turn this off, I click on the Worksharing display off and I can simply synchronize my model and exit it. Once I want to exit, I get these two options, whether I want to relinquish elements or whether I want to keep ownership. You will always click relinquish here unless you want to keep ownership, which is not very often. Basically, you do want to enable others to work on these elements. So in order to not cause any problem to anyone else, you are going to be clicking relinquish here. And just so we can explore one more option, let's just enter the model once again. I go to my central model file location. I click course project, I make sure that this create new local option is on, and I click open. And now we are given two options. Basically, we can overwrite existing copy, and that means that this previous local file that we had in our documents will be overridden by this new file. Another option is appending timestamp to existing copy. I will click append. And as the file is being created, we can see that now it has created this new file that has today's date visible and that has the actual time when I am creating this local copy. This can also be helpful because occasionally you might want to create backups. This means every time I create the new local copy of the today's date, it is basically leaving you with one backup. It is not something that everybody has to do because not everybody has enough space on their computer, but it is a good practice for at least one person to occasionally save these backups, because if by accident you have deleted something, if you want to actually go back a couple of days before and you want to copy some old elements, basically you can then enter the backup with this exact date and then copy some elements that you have, for example, deleted by accident. So it is actually very useful for occasional saving of the backup of the local file. But what about if you want to send this file to somebody outside of your company, or you simply want to revert this back to the regular file? I'm just going to get out of this file. I'm not going to save it. I will click relinquish. I'm going to click open again, and I'm going to select this file. I will click the option detach from central. What this does is basically now I'm opening the new file which is not attached to the central file. I will click open, and I'm given two options, whether I want to detach and preserve worksets or detach and discard worksets. It's really depending on the situation. In this instance, I'm going to click detach and discard from worksets. Basically what this does is it will detach from central and it will leave me with the regular file. Now this is no longer part of the central file. I can see that Synchronize option is frozen again, and this has just become the regular file. If I want to send it to someone, I can simply go to File, save as project, and save this in my folder. Next time I open it, I can double click on it because it is no longer part of the central model. Like I said, if you want to send the file to someone else, it is a good practice to detach it first, because obviously that person is not going to be having access to the central file at all. Official sending of the central files to the outside consultants is actually a topic for itself, and if you're interested in that topic, post in the comments below and I can actually create a lesson about that as well. And this is it for today's lesson. If you have any questions, post in the comments below. And if you like this video, like and subscribe, it means a lot to me, and thank you for watching, and see you in the next lesson. Bye! If you want to learn Revit like a pro, take a look at my architectural course through the link below. You will learn how to develop the project from concept to final design using Autodesk Revit. It is ideal for beginners, but valuable for anyone looking to build a solid foundation. By the end, you'll know how to take a design from concept to detailed documentation with confidence and clarity. You will gain a solid Revit workflow you can actually use independently or in work in larger teams in architectural studios. With almost 100 structured video lessons, it is designed to help beginners master Revit step by step. To support your progress, I've included assignments with each lesson, plus the opportunity to ask questions and receive guidance directly from me whenever you need it. This way, you're not just watching tutorials, you're actively learning, practicing, and improving every step of the way. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.